All right, good afternoon, baseball fans. Anthony with Bleacher Bums Gaming. Hope everyone's having a great day. And did a unboxing video of this the other day, the receipt of the Cooperstown collection from play.com for History Maker Baseball. And I got both the Cooperstown Legends and the Cooperstown Pioneer sets. And I'm going to put together a 10-team league. And this is going to be the draft for the players in that league. So just real quick, again, 10 teams. The teams are named mostly after the fictional teams in the Universal Baseball Association, which was a book by Robert Coover, came out in 1968, as well as a couple of names in tribute to some of the older teams. So the 10 teams are the Knickerbockers, the Metropolitans, the Haymakers, the Pastime Athletic Club, the Olympics, the Excelsiors, the Keystones, the Highlanders, the Bridegrooms, and finally the Grays. So the way this draft is going to work is I've divided all the cards up by position and sorted them, shuffled them, I should say. And what I will do is for each team, as we go through the draft, I will pick 2 players. Or turn over the first 2 players in the pile. The teams will then have the choice of which player to take, and the other one will go to the discard pile. The next team will turn over 2 players, and they can either take one of those 2 or take the player in the discard pile, at which point the other 2 will go to the discard pile. And it will continue in that fashion until we complete the draft. I'm just going to do the 8 positions and then a pitching staff of 5. I've already done the relief pitchers here and assigned them to their teams. And then with the players that are left over, I will just sort them and assign them randomly to the various teams. So in that scenario, you could get a great player based on the random luck of the draw as the players are sorted, or you can select a great player if you happen to draw a couple during the draft process. So that's how it is going to work. And thus far, after the relief pitchers, the Knickerbockers have Andy Cooper, who is a great Negro League relief pitcher. The Metropolitans have Dennis Eckersley, Haymakers Rich Gossage. The Pastime Athletic Club has Bruce Suter. The Olympics have Trevor Hoffman. Excelsiors have Raleigh Fingers. The Keystones have Hilton Smith, another pitcher from the Negro Leagues. The Highlanders have Mariano Rivera, Bridegrooms Hoyt Wilhelm, and the Grays have John Smoltz, who I put in the game as a reliever. He's rated on the set as both a reliever and a starter, but with the limited number of relievers, I felt he would be best suited there for the game. So we are ready to go. And the other thing too, I'll do a snake draft. So the team that goes first in this round will then go last in the next. And it's going to benefit you to go last because the last team, if there are enough players left, will get to choose from 4 instead of 2. That way we'll kind of balance things out and hopefully get good balance in terms of the elite players between all the teams. And Philip Reynolds, welcome. What's better, payoff pitch or History Maker Baseball? Okay, I'll answer that from a strength standpoint. If you wanted to do a strict replay, a baseball replay, I would go with either payoff pitch or inside pitch. To me, and in my opinion, those are the 2 best tabletop baseball games out there, especially for replay purposes, just based on the gameplay and also the number of players they give you. If you want to do something like I'm doing here, an alternate universe that's not based on strict replay guidelines or reality, History Maker Baseball would get the nod. It allows you to basically create your own narrative through the game with the way it plays out and the mechanics, and it is a fun game. And like I said, both games do what they do best very well, but for replay, payoff pitch or inside pitch, for just a good baseball, fun baseball game to play, kind of an alternate reality where you build your own narrative, definitely History Maker. So hope that answers your question. So we're going to get started with the draft, and the first position we will draft will be catchers. And again, I will select 2 players from the top of the pile. So the Olympics have the first pick, and they will get to choose between Bill Dickey and Biz Mackey. And Mackey, a great Negro League catcher. Dickey, of course, catcher for some of those great Yankees teams in the 30s. And going with the traits, I'm going to give the edge to Dickey. So the Olympics will take Dickey, and Biz Mackey will go to the quote-unquote discard pile. So next up on the clock, the Pastime Athletic Club. And they will get to choose, and they can, again, select Mackey, or they can choose between Buck Ewing and Carlton Fisk. Carlton Fisk, of course, Pudge with the Sox, and also the Red Sox, that great home run in the 1975 World Series. And Buck Ewing, the premier catcher of the 19th century. This is a close call. Geez, it's really close. I'm going to, sorry, Pudge, I'm going to go with Buck Ewing as the draftee for the Pastime Athletic Club. Next up on the clock, the Haymakers, and the Haymakers will get to choose between Ray Schock and Ivan Rodriguez, and I'm actually going to go off the top card in the discard pile, and they're going to take Carlton Fisk. Close between him and Rodriguez. I'm going to give the edge to Pudge as a hitter, or I guess the original Pudge. And then, next two for the Metropolitans, Johnny Bench, Roy Campanella. Man, tough choice, two great Hall of Famers, but it's got to be Johnny B. Man, who can palm 7 baseballs in his hand, so great pick for the Metropolitans. Next up on the clock, and I don't know why I keep doing that, the Knickerbockers, between Ernie Lombardi, the slow-footed but efficient hitting catcher for the Cincinnati Reds in the 30s and 40s, and, of course, Ted Simmons, the Cardinals catcher. And I'm going to have to go with Big Ernie for that one. So the Knickerbockers select Ernie. Next up will be the Grays. And the Grays get picked between dead ball great Roger Bresnahan of the New York Giants and Chicago Cub Gabby Hartnett. Bresnahan, a better contact hitter. Hartnett, I think I've got to give the edge to him, and he will be selected by the Grays. Next up, Inside Pitch is a great game, Phil. I'm going to have to check that video out, actually. How do you like it so far? Next up on the clock, the Bridegroom. They get to pick between Deacon White, another great 19th century player, and the A's catcher Mickey Cochran, part of those great Connie Mack teams of the 30s. And you would think the choice would be Cochran, but Deacon White, also a gold fielder, an icon, and a little bit better hitting, so Mickey is going to get bumped, and the Bridegrooms will take Deacon White. Next up on the clock, the Highlanders, and who will be catching Mariano Rivera. We've got Josh Gibson and Gary Carter. It's kind of a no-brainer. The Highlanders get Josh Gibson, so they're looking strong right out of the chute. Finally, the Keystones with the 9th pick of the first round. They get to pick between Yogi Berra and another great Negro League pitcher from Hilldale, Louis Santop. And God, Yogi, but again, going by strictly ratings, Louis Santop gets a nod. And finally, final pick of the first round, Mike Piazza and Rick Farrell. And it's pretty much going to be decisively to Piazza, in my opinion. So again, the rest of the catchers will be shuffled and sorted randomly after the draft. As we move on to the first baseman, D. Scott Howard in the chat. What's up, buddy? Hope you are doing well. Got here early. And just to recap, I'm picking 2 players as we go through the draft, and the teams will get to select 1 to draft, and the remaining players that do not get picked will be shuffled and sorted randomly after the draft. So first base. And Pastime Athletic Club will get the first choice here. And they get to pick between Roger Connor, a great 19th century first baseman with the Giants, and Mule Suttles, Negro League great. Go with Suttles as the pick there for their first baseman. And next up, the Haymakers, and they get to pick between Johnny Mize and Rod Carew. Rod Carew champion, but Mize, he's got that home run swing, and the Haymakers are going to take Johnny Mize. Metropolitans, to add to their offense, and Buck Leonard, another Negro League great, and Jim Bottomley. Oh, God, this is another tough choice. Bottomley played on those great St. Louis teams, late 20s, early 30s. Very good hitter. And we're going to go with Buck Leonard. So the Metropolitans, what might be a controversial pick, take Leonard over Jim Bottomley, Sonny Jim. And next up, George Sisler, the keystone of those great Browns teams in the early 20s, and George Kelly from the Giants, also in the 20s. No brainer there. The Knickerbockers take George Sisler, 400 hitter, and excelled in hitting doubles and triples. So next we go to the Grays and the Baby Bull Orlando Cepeda and Mr. Steady Eddie Murray. Boy, this is right down the middle. Flip a coin, and the Grays are going to select Murray. Next up, the Bridegrooms looking for their first base slot, and they're going to get to pick between Mr. Nugenics, Frank Thomas, and Dan Brothers, another 18th century or 19th century great. And Brothers is going to be the pick of the Bridegrooms, who are going old school so far in the draft. Highlanders get to pick between Lou Gehrig, William McCovey. Great matchup, but that is a definite draft of Lou Gehrig. Jeff Bagwell and Bill Terry, great Giants hitter, and also the Houston Astros great Hall of Famer. And going by power, the Keystones are going to take Jeff Bagwell. And finally, the Excelsiors, 19th century great, one of the game's first elite hitters, Cap Anson, and another 19th century player, Jake Beckley. Beckley actually has the advantage over Anson, and the Excelsiors will take him. And finally, again, the last team to pick in the round will get up to 4 cards to choose from. And the Olympics will have Rod Taylor, Negro League great, the Beast, Jimmy Fox, Jim Tomei, or Frank Chance of the famous Tinker to Evers to Chance combo. I think it's coming down to Tomei and Fox. I'm going to give it to the Beast on the batting average, better hitter overall. Tomei just as good as a home run hitter. So there's a couple of really good first basemen that will get assigned randomly to teams. So there will be no losers here. I think that was a pretty balanced draft for the second round for first baseman. And we will move on now to second baseman, round 3 of the draft, cruising right along. So first up will be the Haymakers, first pick of round number 3. They'll get to choose between Rogers, Hornsby, and Johnny Evers. No brainer, Evers goes to the Haymakers. Metropolitans up next. Joe Morgan and Tony Lazzeri, another fairly easy choice in my opinion, as the Metropolitans take Joe Morgan. Next we have the Knickerbockers looking to add some more punch to that lineup that already has George Sisler and Charlie Gehringer, solid hitter for Detroit in the 20s and 30s, is selected by the Knickerbockers. The Grays get to pick between Ryan Sandberg and another one of the first African-Americans to play in Major League at the top level, Frank Grant. And I'm going to give the edge to Grant, so Sandberg will go into the pile that will be distributed randomly. And the Bridegrooms, Frankie Frisch and Craig Biggio, and going with the speedster and a defensive whiz, Frankie Frisch. Next up, the Highlanders, who added Gehrig in the first round, another solid draft choice for the Highlanders. They go with cocky Eddie Collins, A's and White Sox great from the dead ball era. The Keystones, Nap Lajoie and Billy Herman, and Lajoie, easy choice there for the Keystones. And then finally, or next, I should say, the Excelsiors, Paul Molitor and Bill Mazeroski. And wow, that's close. Neither the elite position, but the Excelsiors will take Mazeroski. The Olympics, Roberto Alomar and Bobby Doerr, and both semi-champion and sluggers. Doerr's got a triple on his Delta result and also the semi-good eye. Alomar, a better base runner, and the Olympics elect to take Bobby Doerr. And final pick of the third round, The Pastime Athletic Club gets a choice between Joe Gordon, Red Shane Dienst, and Jackie Robinson, and that's a easy choice. So 3 rounds in the books. We go to the shortstops next, and checking in with the chat. I actually, D. Scott, I watched some of Chris's tutorials on that. Chris really does a great job too with tutorials. He takes his time, explains the game well, and yeah, he does a great job with that, and it does give a very good overview into the game and the mechanics. And I actually, since I'll be starting this after not playing for a while, watched most of them just to make sure I got the rust off. So we are on to the next round, and the Metropolitans will have the first pick in round number 4. And shortstops, they get to choose between aches and pains, Luke Appling of the Sox and Mr. Cubby, Ernie Banks. And Appling, a better overall contact hitter, but they're going to go with some power and select Mr. Cub himself, Ernie Banks. Next up, the Knickerbockers. And Knickerbockers, Luis Aparicio, Robert Moranville, two players more weighted towards defense, both gold on defense. Moranville and Icon, both active base runners. Edge hitting to Aparicio, and that's who the Knickerbockers select. The Grays up next, and they get Arky Vaughan. Arky Vaughan is one of the top 5 shortstops in the history of the game, especially as a hitter, and he gets overlooked a lot. Willie Wells, another Negro League great, played for the St. Louis team in the 20s, and that is going to be a choice for the Grays of Arky Vaughan. Next up, the Bridegrooms, who get to select between Alan Trammell and Joe Tinker, and Tinker, not as good offensively, a better defensive player. And the Bridegrooms elect to go the offensive route and take Trammell. Next up for the Highlanders, who do they want to pair with Cocky Eddie Collins, Robin Yount, and Joe Cronin? And Cronin, maybe a controversial pick. The Highlanders, Collins is a good offensive middle infielder. They're going to go with defense at the shortstop position and take Cronin, who still is a capable hitter. Next up, the Keystones and Bobby Wallace, another underrated shortstop from the dead ball era. And Pee Wee Reese, Brooklyn Dodger great. And I'm going to go again with the defensive route and take Bobby Wallace, as he has the edge there over Reese. The Excelsior's up next. And they're going to look for offense here to compare or to pair up with Bill Mazeroski. Travis Jackson and Huey Jennings, great 19th century ball player, and he is off the charts based on the era he played in. So they're going to add Huey Jennings to the lineup. We go next to the Olympics, and to team up with Bobby Dorr, again another 19th century choice, John Ward and Lou Boudreau, the captain of the great 50s or 40s and 50s Indians teams, and Boudreau is a selection. Pastime Athletic Club. And wow, they're going to go with the captain, Derek Jeter, to team up with Jackie Robinson for their middle infield combo. And finally, the last pick of round number 4. And again, they'll get to pick between 4 players. That's the benefit of going last. Joe Sewell, maybe the hardest pitcher or player to strike out in the history of the game. Incredible bat control. George Davis, another 19th century great. The Wizard Ozzie Smith. How do you bypass Ozzie Smith to pair with Ernie Banks or Rogers Hornsby? You don't. So that is it for the shortstops. And there's still some good shortstops left. Shortstops that didn't even get to the draft pool: Pop Lloyd, Cal Ripken Jr., and of course these 3, Sewell, Davis, and Rizzuto, as well as everyone else who was overlooked. So they'll be distributed randomly as we move to the third baseman. And checking in on the chat, Arnold Hunter, welcome, my friend. Hey, these cards, they're normally perforated cards, and from Strat-o-matic and even Inside Pitch. The Inside Pitch cards are really well put together, but they're perforated, which means they're thinner. This, besides the look of the card, and you can see it's got a glossy finish, really nicely done, has a little bio for each player, the diagrams in the background, beautiful card. And for a perforated card, it is pretty solid. It's a little bit thicker than usual. So very good quality cards. In fact, I wish Keith made all his sets on this type of card. This is really a cut above in terms of quality for the set that it's put out on. So we will get to the third baseman now. But yeah, to answer your question, Arnold, very, very good quality cards. All right, and first choice in the 5th round goes to the Knickerbockers. And they are going to get to pick between Ron Santo and another 19th century great, Jimmy Collins. Collins, a better overall hitter, both good with the glove. Got the power aspect with Santo. A little bit of controversy there. They had Aparicio. They kind of went defense last pick, so they're going to go with Santo for the pop this pick. On to the Grays. And Eddie Matthews, Pie Trainer, tough choice. Matthews, a slugger. Trainer, probably a better overall hitter offensively. Not much to choose from. Trainer, a better base runner. That's who the Grays take. And they'll team up with another Pirate on their team on the infield, Archie Vaughn. Bridegroom's up next. And Chris from Tabletop Delaware's favorite dead ball player, home run candlestick maker Baker against another 19th century phenom, King Kelly. And can't go wrong with either of these guys. Both good base runners, both good at the plate. The Bridegrooms go with Franklin Home Run Baker. Highlanders need to fill out their infield. Chipper Jones and Tony Perez. Wow. Pretty even hitting-wise. Jones not as good defensively, a better base runner. Man. They're going to go with Jones as he makes a little bit better contact than Perez. Keystones on the clock next. They get George Kell and Ray Dandridge, a Negro League great. And based on defense, George Kell, of course, a very pertinent player in stopping Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak, 56-game hitting streak. They're going to go with Dandridge, though. So we haven't got to the sluggers yet. The Excelsiors, Judd Wilson, another Negro League great, Freddie Lindstrom from some of those great 20s Giants teams. And the Excelsiors go with Freddie Lindstrom. Up to the Olympics. And Olympics, Judy Johnson and Wade Boggs. Wade Boggs would have gotten picked, I think, over a few of the guys that went before him, not here. However, as the Olympics go with Judy Johnson, another Negro League great from the Hillsdale team. Edgar Martinez and Mr. Pine Tar himself, my favorite third baseman from Kansas City, George Brett, who cheats. Can't deny his skill, though, as the Pastime Athletic Club takes Brett to pair with and add to an infield that includes Jeter. And finally, the Haymakers, Mike Schmidt and Brooks Robinson. Do we go with defense? Schmidt's not bad defensively, and he's got that pop that Robinson does not have, and he will join the Haymakers squad. And finally, third base is the one position that's short, so these guys will get a choice between Robinson or Harmon Killebrew. Wow. You know what? They've got some pop at shortstop in Banks, so the Metropolitans are going to take Brooks Robinson and add some leather to the hot corner there. So on to round number 6, and we will be in the left fielders now. So with the first pick of round number 6, the Grays, and they get to choose, and there's some definite, of course, offensive players in this group. Sam Crawford, Wahoo Sam, the Robin to Ty Cobb's Batman on those great Tigers teams in the early part of the century. And the speedy Lou Brock. And Lou Brock has a delta result of single automatic stolen base. Crawford's is a triple. Wow, that's a tough choice. They're going to go with speed, someone at the top of the lineup. The Grays select Lou Brock. Bridegrooms, Monty Irvin and Jesse Burkett. Both solid players. Burkett, another 19th century great, and that's who they're going to go with. Highlanders, and they get to pick between Joe Ducky Medwick and Kai Kyler, Pittsburgh great. And another close choice, better defense for Medwick, and that's who the Highlanders are going to take, hoping they probably get an upgrade in that position when we do the final assignment. Heine Manouche is a fine player, but here you got to go with Ricky. So Joining the Keystones, they got top of the order speed and pop in Rickey Henderson, greatest base stealer in the history of the game. The Excelsiors get to choose between Slide and Billy Hamilton, 19th century great, and Zach Wheat, Brooklyn slugger from the teens and 20s. And another good matchup here, and wow. Maybe another controversial choice, but the Excelsiors will go with Zach Wheat as we move to the Olympics. And they get a choice between Hank Greenberg and Chick Hafey. Greenberg, one of the great sluggers of the 30s, no-brainer to the Olympics, goes Hank. And George Brett looks to see who his next teammate will be. No-brainer there. Ted Williams over Ross Youngs, and Youngs a fine player whose career was tragically cut short by Bright's disease. But you can't pass Williams. You can't pass Hank Aaron either. So Hammer and Hank goes to the Haymakers, and that gives them some clout in their lineup. Sweet swinging Billy Williams and Joe Kelly, one of the famed Baltimore stars in the 1890s. And here we've got the pop of Williams, Joe Kelly, a better defensive player and runner, and the Metropolitans are going to select him. And finally, getting to choose between 2, 3, 4 players as the last pick of the round, the Knickerbockers, orator Jim O'Rourke from the 19th century, Captain Carl Yastrzemski, Willie Stargell, or Tim Raines. I think this comes down to Yastrzemski or Stargell. And wow, maybe another controversial pick, but the Knickerbockers go with Willie Stargell. Some players that did not appear in the draft that will help teams: Cool Papa Bell, Jim Rice, Dave Bancroft, and Cristobal Torriente. So now the bridegrooms are set to lead off round number 7, and we are to the center fielders now. And in this group, Ty Cobb, Tris Speaker, among others. Mickey Mantle's in here as well. So some definite elite players in this. Al, Red Sox fan, welcome to the chat, buddy. We are about 2/3 of the way through our History Maker League of Legends draft. So the bridegrooms get to pick between Mantle and Cobb. Wow, toughest choice of the draft. Chat, who do they take? Do they take the speedy and guaranteed to hit close to 400 Ty Cobb, or probably the game's first true 5-tool player in Mickey Mantle? Who do you take, guys? Mantle or Cobb? That is a choice. That is a choice. I'm leaning towards Mantle, and Cobb, again, as a player on top, will be eligible to be picked next by the Highlanders, too. Come on, guys, help out the bridegrooms. Cobb or Mantle? Who do you got? Cobb or Mantle? Okay, I'm going to make an executive decision, as much as I hate to do it, to Ty. I think you got to go with Mickey Mantle. You couldn't go wrong either way, but Mantle has speed and pop. And the Highlanders up next. Duke Snyder and Ed Roush, and they're actually going to go exercise their ability to go to the top player in the discard pile, and they will take the Georgia Peach Ty Cobb. Can't go wrong there. Mantle out. Yeah, that was a tough choice, Al, but yeah, just for the power aspect, I had to go with Mantle. So the Keystones, Stan the Man Musial and Elmer Flick, dead ball great, and I think that's kind of a no-brainer. Roush, I don't think Roush is a better choice than Musial. So Musial will go to the Keystones. Excelsiors, they get to pick between Enos Country Slaughter and Al Bucketfoot Simmons. Al Simmons, a largely forgotten, well, I shouldn't say largely, but not commonly mentioned by a lot of modern fans. One of the best hitters of his time, and especially in that offensive heavy era of the 30s. And this is his 25 Philadelphia season, but a great addition to the outfield for the Excelsiors, Al Bucketfoot Simmons. On to the Olympics, and they get to choose between Fred Clark and Max Carey, 2 Pittsburgh greats, and both played about the same time. Carey, in fact, succeeded Clark in center field for the Pirates. And they can also go to the top of the discard pile, which is Enos Country Slaughter. The Olympics actually did not get a very favorable draw here. They're going to go with Fred Clark for his leadership abilities. Pastime Athletic Club. And our 2 votes were for Mickey Mantle for sure, and good call, I think. So the Pastime Athletic Club, Junior or Earl Coombs, one of the catalysts to top the order for the great 27 Yankees. Griffey's got that power, though, and plays a mean center field. Pastime Athletic Club pairs Griffey with Ted Williams in their outfield. That is a pretty good combo, guys. And finally, Andre the Hawk Dawson and Kirby Puckett. And Dawson, Puckett, 2 very comparable players, both played in primarily in the 80s. And wow, haymakers are going to go with the Hawk. That could be another controversial choice. Metropolitans up next. Pete Hill, Negro League great, played for the Chicago team in the early part of the 20th century. And 19th century player Hugh Duffy. And Duffy, a better hitter and not as good defensively, but a better base runner. And the Metropolitans add Hugh Duffy to their lineup. Knickerbockers are on the clock, and they get to pick between Richie Ashburn and Larry Doby, and could also take Pete Hill. Probably all around, and especially with speed, they will go with Richie Ashburn. And finally, the Grays, and again, as the last pick of the round, they get to pick between 4 of the remaining players. So do they want Tris Speaker, Oscar, wow, it's going to be another tough choice, Oscar Charleston, Jolton Joe DiMaggio, or Sam Thompson? Holy smokes. Tris Speaker and Joe DiMaggio and Oscar Charleston, Negro League great. I think overall quality, Speaker, an outstanding base runner and defensive center fielder, definitely good at the plate. But I think to add that power aspect, and he's not bad defensively, the Grays have to go with Jolton Joe DiMaggio. So somebody is going to get a steal when we do the random assignment in Tris Speaker. And other players who will be assigned randomly to teams. Another one of the first 5 tool players, Willie Mays, Earl Averill, and Lloyd Wainer from the Pirates. So we are down, as the Highlanders, we are down to our final position pick. Round number 8, the Highlanders go first, and we're on right fielders. And of course, in this group, we have the Bambino, Babe Ruth, among others. And yeah, there was definitely some tough choices in center field that round, Al. Griffey will catch a bunch of flies Ted won't get to. True. That's a good point. Ted can focus on his hitting, which he likes better anyway. All right, let's see if the Bambino comes up in this. It would be crazy if Ruth did not come up as a draft choice and got assigned randomly. So first pick, round number 8, Highlanders on the board, Dave Winfield and Roberto Clemente. To me, that's an easy choice. I love Dave Winfield, but you got to go with the cannon in right. Good hitter, too. Ed Delahanty, probably one of the premier hitters of the 19th century, and Hack Wilson. Now, this is a tough call. Wilson, he's one of the players I do not think belongs in the Hall of Fame. He only had 244 career home runs, had a shortened career due to injuries, and was a lover of the bottle as well. Really, his Hall of Fame induction was based primarily on an amazing season in 1930 or 31, where he hit, or knocked in, 190 RBIs, still a major league record. I think that's going to be enough to earn him a spot in right field next to Stan Musial on the Keystones, however. So Hack Wilson rides his great season to a draft pick over Ed Delahanty as well. Sam Rice, Senators great, and Goose Goslin, both of these guys Senators, and they played together on the same team for a few years. Another tough matchup. I'm going to go with Sam Rice only because he was a little bit better defensively. Goose Goslin, again, very even pick in my opinion there. So right fielder for the Olympics. And there we have it, the Bambino and the Olympics hit lottery gold as George Herman Ruth And Vladimir Guerrero wasn't even talked about, will be joining the Olympics. So Ruth, and that is a game changer for them right away. Mel Ott and Chuck Klein for the Pastime Athletic Club. Ott, the original toy cannon before Jimmy Wynn. And Klein, though, he gives him a run for his money with his 32 season. And wow, both home run kings, both semi-champions. I think the hero trait's going to win it for Chuck Klein as he joins Griffey with the Pastime Athletic Club and Ott to the discard pile. Willard Brown, another Negro League great from the 30s, played with Satchel Paige and Harold Baines. And here, actually, I think they're going to go to the discard pile, top player in the discard pile, and take Mel Ott. So on to the Metropolitans, and Mr. Padre, Tony Gwynn, against the other Wayner brother, Big Poison Paul Wayner. And you got to go with Tony there, I think. Can't argue with, well, you could argue with that, but I don't think I think it's a good choice. Now, Hannes Wagner, because of the season he was rated, it was rated in the outfield. I'm sure you noticed he didn't come up at shortstop. This was his 1900 season with Pittsburgh. So going up against Turkey Stearns, another great Negro leaguer, but you cannot deny the chance to take Hannes Wagner. So he joins the Knickerbockers. And down to the Grays, and Wee Willie Keeler and Harry Hooper. And Turkey Stearns in play as well. Wee Willie Keeler, Mr. Hit 'em where they ain't. All 5'6" of him is going to, actually I think he was 5'4", is going to join the Grays. So Joel got, yeah, you know what? I'm looking, Joel, they rated the top season were rated for this set. And just looking at the season, I think overall Charleston definitely is definitely in the same conversation as Willie Mays. He was amazing. Just based on the season that was available, though, it was tough to bypass. All right, so final pick of round number 8, Bridegrooms. And again, they'll get to choose between 4 players. Harry Hillman, Tiger great, and Ty Cobb. He was kind of Ty Cobb, a mentor to him. Another Tiger, Al Kaline, Frank Robinson, his 66 Baltimore team, and Ralph Kiner. So, this is, again, you go for the average guy, like meaning high average Harry Hillman, or do you look to get a little more pop with a Frank Robinson or Ralph Kiner? And Kiner is the home run legend trait with slugger and home run king. Robinson semi. Wow. Tough choice there. Let's go with, they've got Mickey Mantle, so we're going to go with Frank Robinson as the final right fielder in the draft. So there, our positions are filled, and we will do and some other right fielders that will be in the random assignment, and Mr. October Reggie Jackson. And I think I had 2 Vladimir Guerrero cards in here. I did. There was an update to his card, so I need to take that one out. All right, so our position players are done, and we'll move to starting pitchers now. And I will do 5 of these. So with the first pick in round number 9, the Keystones, and they will get to choose between the big, wow, 2 more great choices. The Big Train and Rube. Wow. You got to go with Walter Johnson there. I think that's undeniable. Next up, the Excelsiors. Wade Hoyt and Jack Morris. They're going to go to the top of the discard pile and take Rube Waddell. Don't think you can go wrong there. Red Ruffing and Dizzy Dean. And the Olympics. Don't waste any time in taking Dizzy Dean. Don Drysdale, Big John, and Joe McGinnity, the Ironman, often pitch both games of a doubleheader. He's got the Gilded trait, which hurts him a little bit. Drysdale, good solid power pitcher. Pastime Athletic Club takes him. Christy Mathewson and Herb Pennock. Haymakers don't even blink and take Mathewson. Grover, Cleveland, Alexander, and Tom Terrific. Wow, another tough choice. So both with the ace quality. Alexander, a star. Seaver has flash. He's going to get more strikeouts, better control with Alexander. I think control is going to be important in this league. They're going to take Alexander. So on to the Knickerbockers. And they get a chance between Carl Hubble, struck out the probably greatest series of batters ever assembled in an all-star game. I think it was Ruth, Gehrig, Fox, and Simmons all in order in, I believe, the 1934 all-star game, if I'm not mistaken. Great pitcher, Lefty Gomez. I think you have to go with King Carl, the screwball specialist. On to the Grays we go. And Phil Niekro and Sandy Koufax, another no-brainer as the Grays get potentially or possibly the greatest left-hander in the game, Sandy Koufax. 19th century player popping up for the first two of them, actually, Pud Galvin and Kid Nichols. And both have that gilded trait. Galvin's going to get you a few more Ks. The Bridegrooms take him. Bridegrooms have gone with quite a few 19th century players. It'll be interesting to see how they fare. Addie Joss and Smokey Joe Williams. Smokey Joe, a great Negro League pitcher in the first 20 years of the 20th century. And, of course, Addie Joss, a very sad story, struck down by tuberculosis at the peak of his career. And, in fact, a memorial game held to raise funds for his widow and children was technically the first all-star game played in Major League history in 1911 when a team of American League All-Stars took on the Joss's Cleveland teammates. So, wow, another tough choice. I think Smokey Joe Williams looks a little bit better statistically wise, so they're going to go with him. And Randy Johnson, the big unit. Oh, I'm sorry, we're actually back to the top, so the Excelsiors will be the first pick in this round. So joining Rube Waddell, wow, do you take the big unit Randy Johnson and get two great smoke pitchers at the top of your lineup? I think you've got to. Johnson and Waddell on the same team. Going to be a lot of strikeouts by the Excelsiors. And Rapid Robert Feller against Martin DeHigo, another Negro League great. And, of course, Feller, he was the youngest player to win 100 games in Major League history. So I think you've got to go. Well, DeHigo's got great stats. Feller is flash and only a semi-ace. This is a tough choice. I'm going to go with Feller. I think you'd make a good case for DeHigo, though, just based on how his card is rated. Chief Bender and Whitey Ford. Bender, one of the linchpins of the great Connie Mack teams in the early part of the 20th century. A little bit injury prone, but that's not going to come into play here, so you got to pair him up with John Drysdale on the Pastime Athletic Club. Old Hoss Radbourne, another great 19th century hurler. The Intimidator, Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson had an immaculate season in 1968 and double control, flash star ace. He's going to be good. He might be the ace on the Haymakers team. Eddie Plank, another one of the great Philadelphia A's pitchers in the early part of the 20th century. Epirixi, who pitched for both Brooklyn and Cincinnati. Plank is going to give the Metropolitans a nice left-handed presence in that rotation. And Carl Hubble will be joined by either Don Sutton, a very consistent ball player, pitcher, and Big Bill Foster, another great Negro League pitcher. And Foster, he can actually help you a little bit with his stick. He is going to join Hubble on the Knickerbockers. On to the Grays. And who will join ace Sandy Koufax? Do we get Ray Brown, another Negro League great? Robin Roberts. Roberts be plagued by gopher ball problems during his career. Really, geez. With these two choices, actually, the Grays are going to team up a couple of Dodgers and go to the top of the discard pile and take Don Sutton. So Bridegrooms, they get to pick between Gaylord Perry and Tim Keefe, another great 19th century hurler. And in staying with their draft pattern, they love those 19th century guys. They take Keefe. The Highlanders, Cy Young and Mordecai Brown. Wow. I don't think you can pass on the pitcher who has the award for the best pitcher named after him. Though I'd have to say Brown has a little better ratings on this card. I'm going to go with Cy Young. And Brown will go to the Keystones if they don't get good options here. He'd be a good addition with Walter Johnson. Greg Maddux and Pop Haynes from the Cardinals. So this is between Maddux and going to the top of the pile to take Mordecai Brown back. Oh, man, I think by just control factor itself, you have to go with Greg Maddux, and he'll pair nicely with Walter Johnson. So the third round of pitchers, and we go back to the Olympics, top of the draft order. So 3 more rounds of pitchers and the draft will be over. And the Olympics, joining Bob Feller on their staff, will be either Lefty Grove or Hal Newhouser. Lefty Grove's 1931 season, based on as potent as offenses were in baseball at that time, is arguably, you could put him with Walter Johnson's 1913 season, Christy Mathewson in 05, Guidry in 78, Gibson's in 68. But his season was as impressive as any of them based on the offense he faced that year. And because of that, he is going to join the Olympics and will be a good addition with Robert Feller. Pastime Athletic Club, Clark Johnson and Catfish Hunter. And they're going to go to the discard pile and call up Hal Newhouser off the top of that pile. Haymakers up next, and Jose Mendez, another Negro League great, and Jack Chesbro, holder of most wins in a season in the modern era. His wild pitch in that 1904 season also handed the Red Sox the pennant, however. Mendez a little bit better, and he will join Bob Gibson on the Haymakers. Next up, the Metropolitans, and will they take Bullet Joe Rogan, another Negro League great, or Vic Willis, a star of that first World Series for the Boston American team? And here it's going to come down to that gilded trait could hurt Willis, so Bullet Joe Rogan is going to join the Metropolitans. Knickerbockers up next on the clock, and they get to choose between Roy Halladay and Satchel Paige. Wow. At first glance, this would be an easy choice to take Page, but Halladay, he's got that dynamic trait, which means he excelled in a high offense era. And, oh, man. I think the nod is going to go to Satchel. I think that's one you could kind of debate, though. So the Grays, a couple of Dodgers on their staff thus far. Do they go for early win of the White Sox or the great lefty Warren Spahn? And actually, God, I'm looking at Halladay. Star control, they're going to go with Spahn. So Bridegrooms up next, and they get to pick between lefty Steve Carlton and Ed Walsh, described as the only man who could strut while standing still by contemporaries. Great dead ball pitcher for the White Sox. And 1908 season was phenomenal. Steve's 72 season every bit is phenomenal. Another baby. Well, you know what? If we're going by the Bridegrooms and their preference, they're going to take Walsh. So next up, the Highlanders. Last pick was Cy Young. They get Nolan Ryan and Dazzy Vance. And you know what? They're going to come back to the discard pile and pass on both these great fireballers and take lefty Steve Carlton. Keystones up next. Burt Blyleven and Ted Lyons. And is that going to be enough to get Ryan back in the game? They're going to controversially take Burt Blyleven as well to join Maddux on that staff. Final pick of round number 3 of the pitching draft, Juan Marshall and Bob Lemon. And the hot-tempered Marshall will be joining the Excelsiors. Good control pitcher. And on to round number 4 of the pitchers, and this will be the last round for the pitchers, and everyone else will be assigned. So, Pastime AC, Hal Newhouser was their last pick. Jim Palmer and the Hoosier Thunderbolt, Amos Rusi. And Rusi was traded to Cincinnati for Christy Mathewson. He had a lot of wins behind him, only a couple in front of him, though. Probably one of the most lopsided trades in baseball history. In his day, he was good, but his arm was gone by that time. Pastime AC, they're going to go with Jim Palmer. Next up, the Haymakers. And they get to pick between Red Faber and Rube Marquardt. And Marquardt, if you watch the unboxing of this, told a little story about him relayed from the glory of their times. Tom Glavine and Burley Grimes. Burley Grimes, the last sanctioned spitballer, grandfathered in after the pitch was outlawed in 1920. And I think we have to go with Glavine here to the Metropolitans. Knickerbockers up next. Mike Mussina and Pedro Martinez. Let's go with Pedro. And the Grays up next. Leon Day and Jim Bunning, another great Negro League pitcher. Day, Bunning, very solid in the 60s, a little bit better ratings, and he gets a nod there. Bridegrooms, and their choice between Mickey Welch, another great 19th century hurler, and Fergie Jenkins. Fergie, of course, a star in one of the replays on this channel, 1969 payoff pitch Fergie Jenkins replay. Welch, God, he's a little bit better, though, so he gets the nod there. And to finish the pitching draft, I'm going to shuffle these guys up real quick. So thus far, I think the Olympics got Babe Ruth, so that's automatically the team that's going to get the most attention and love from the History Maker Baseball Sports Media. So Highlanders will be up next and joining Lefty Carlton. And again, just want to mix these guys up a bit. All right, we're set to go. All right, round 4. Highlanders on the clock, and they get to pick between Burley Grimes and Red Faber, and Grimes gets a nod there, so our knuckleballer makes the draft. Keystone's up. Amos Rusi, the Hoosier Thunderbolt, just based on his flash result, and he is dynamic, meaning he excelled in the high offense era, and Rusi goes to the Keystones. Excelsiors, Old Hoss Radbourne and Jack Chesbrough, and the edge there goes to Haas, so 19th century great joins it. And finally, last pick around number 4, the Olympics, Red Ruffing or Bob Lemon. Ruffing has more traits, but they're all semis, so Lemon is going to get selected by the Olympics. And this is our final round of the draft, at which point we'll assign the rest of the players offline. So Haymakers, final pick of the first round, or the first pick of the final round of the draft, sorry. And looking at pitchers, Mike Mussina and Stan Kovalsky, great Indians pitcher from the teens and 20s. And Mussina, again, that dynamic trait, meaning he excelled in the high offense era, goes to the Haymakers. Metropolitans up next, and Martin Dihigo, Nolan Ryan. And Ryan, going to get screwed again. Dihigo, he was a very tough cut when he came up. Knickerbockers up next, Addie Joss and Mordecai Brown. Wow. I love Joss, but Brown's got to go to the Knickerbockers, and that is a great addition to their rotation. For the Grays, Leon Day and Phil Necro, and they're going to go off the board at the top of the discard pile, take Addie Joss. Bridegrooms on the clock now, Wade Hoyt and Epirixie. Neither of these guys really ring your bell. Leon Day is available from the top of the discard pile. These guys are both semi. Bridegrooms go with Day, who has straight traits in both star and control. Highlanders on the clock next, and who will be joining Burley Grimes, who is their last pick. Ray Brown or Robin Roberts, and they're going to go with Brown. Keystone's up, and Keystone's Gaylord Perry and Jack Morris. Happy chatter, welcome. Yeah, these are, we were talking about this early in the chat, buddy. Keith, I wish all the History Maker sets were like this. For perforated cards, not only is the stock very good, but the artwork and just the coloring, they're a gloss coat. Excellent, excellent cards. So Keystones, Jack Morris or Gaylord Perry, and wow. I'm going to go with a little bit better strikeout potential with Morris, so Keystones take him. Excelsior's Catfish Hunter and Whitey Ford, and that is a fairly easy choice. Ford to the Excelsiors. The Olympics, Ted Lyons or Jesse Pop Haynes, and Lyons has double control when he's fresh. That could come into play. You don't. There's some batters in this league that will draw walks, so the Olympics take Lyons. And our final pick of the draft, Vic Willis or Kid Nichols, and both have the gilded trait. Vic Willis, again, a star in that 1903 World Series with the Boston Americans. And that is going to be our final pick of the draft. So, as mentioned, everybody else will be sorted and randomly assigned to teams, and to balance the teams out, and then we'll get a schedule up and start playing. Amish Gaming, what's up, buddy? Yeah, no, I've been raving about this card since I unboxed them. They are really spectacular. So let's talk about our winners of the draft before we go here. You have to look at the Olympics first of all. Now, their pitching staff, two good top of the rotation pitchers in Lefty Grove and Bob Feller, as well as Dizzy Dean. Of course, the gem of the draft, Babe Ruth. Hero champion, slugger, home run king, and with the slugger and home run king traits, he's also a legendary home run hitter. And he's paired in the outfield with Fred Clark in center. Great ball player on those early Pittsburgh teams. And another slugger in left, Hank Greenberg. Infield, Judy Johnson, Negro League great. Lou Boudreau at short. Bobby Dorr at second, and another. I don't know how you're going to pitch around Greenberg, Fox, and Ruth in the same lineup. That's some power. And again, Bill Dickey is not a slouch. So Olympics are going to be tough to beat. I think other teams have probably a little bit better pitching. Haymakers had an interesting draft. We'll look at them in the bridegrooms before we sign off. So Haymakers, their rotation is going to be Mussina, Marquard, Jose Mendez, Bob Gibson, and Christy Mathewson. Definitely a dynamic duo in Mathewson and Gibby at the top of the rotation. They're going to be tough. In the outfield, from right to left, you have Mel Ott, Andre Dawson, and Hank Aaron. I mean, I think overall that is probably an equal outfield to the Olympics, especially at the corners with Ott and Aaron. Mike Schmidt, more power at the third hot corner. Ozzie Smith, great defense up the middle. Rogers Hornsby, another solid hitter, had a little bit of pop and a very good high average hitter, hit .424 one season. And then more pop at first base. So pop at the corners of the infield and the outfield, capable catching, and their closers, Rich Gossage. So the Haymakers, they're going to be tough too. I mean, I think consistently or top to bottom, they're a little bit better than the Olympics. Catcher to left field. Now the bridegrooms, whether it be by luck of the draw or not, they ended up taking a lot of 19th century players in the draft. So let's talk about the rotation. Leon Day, great Negro League pitcher, probably a fourth or fifth starter. Mickey Welch, Ed Walsh, they'll compete at top of the rotation. Ed Keefe is good as well. Pud Galvin. So three, and you count Walsh, I mean, he's dead ball turn of the century, but three 19th century pitchers on the rotation. In the outfield, Frank Robinson, Mickey Mantle, and Jesse Burkett, another 19th century player. Mantle and Robinson to give him a little pop. Again, Mantle, probably the first 5-tool player of the game. And the infield, some more older players. Home Run Baker, Alan Trammell at short, Frankie Frisch at second will give them some speed and defense. Dan Brothers, another 19th century player at first, and Deacon White, another 19th century player at catcher. So bridegrooms are heavily 19th century. I don't know how that will translate. I don't see them as good as either the Haymakers or the Olympics, but it'll be interesting. So what other teams are interesting here? Pastime Athletic Club as well. I guess we can look at a couple more. So rotation-wise, Vic Willis, Jim Palmer, for this league and these players, Hal Newhouser, Chief Bender, they really don't have a clear-cut ace on the pitching staff, at least based on, again, the competition and the other teams in the set. But 1 to 5, still a very solid rotation. Outfield, Chuck Klein, great power hitter. Ken Griffey Jr. will give them some speed in center. And, of course, the splendid splinter in left. He's going to hit for a high average, get his share of home runs. So outfield is very solid. My buddy George Pinetar Brett at third. Blasphemy playing alongside a Yankee, but he's next to Jeter at short. Jackie Robinson at second, and Mule Suttles, another Negro League great, at first. Buck Ewing, 19th century catcher behind the plate, and Suter is their closer. So that team is solid. I still see the Haymakers and Olympics as better. And we'll go to the Metropolitans now. Martin DeHigo, Tom Glavine, Bullet Joe Rogan, Eddie Plank, and Grover Cleveland Alexander. I say either Bullet Joe Rogan or Alexander, the aces of this staff. Outfield is solid. Well, every outfield is solid in this set. Tony Gwynn, Hugh Duffy, and Joe Kelly, these two, the latter two 19th century players. Not a lot of pop, not as much pop in the outfield as the other teams, so that might come into play. Great defense at the hot corner and the human vacuum cleaner. Ernie Banks and Joe Morgan in the middle of the infield, and Buck Leonard at first. So really, their probably best home run hitter is Ernie Banks. That's going to hurt this team. Actually, Johnny Bench behind the plate, but yeah, they don't have the long ball there, so that's going to definitely be a disadvantage to them. Knickerbockers, Mordecai Brown, Pedro Martinez, Satchel Paige, Big Bill Foster, Carl Hubble. Solid rotation. Mordecai Brown or Pedro, probably the ace. You can put Bill, well, yeah, those two are probably top of the rotation. And then Wagner rated as an outfielder in this set. He's in right, so you'll get speed and contact there. Richie Ashburn, another contact hitter in center, and Pop Stargell in left, so only one power threat in the outfield. Ron Santo at third, Luis Aparicio at short, Charlie Gehringer at second, George Sisler, one of the greatest contact hitters of the game and a good triples hitter, at first, and Early Lombardi at catcher, and Andy Cooper the closer. So yeah, they're to me they're a cut below the Haymakers and Olympics too. Not a lot of pop in their lineup. The Grays. Grays, Addie Joss, Jim Bunning, Warren Spahn, Don Sutton, and Sandy Koufax. Joss and Koufax, great atop the rotation. Again, just based on the ratings. Spahn, not stellar compared to some of the other pitchers, nor is Sutton. The outfield, Wee Willie Keeler in right, Jolton Joe in center, and Lou Brock. Definitely at the corners, an outfield built more for speed and contact. DiMaggio, of course, can take you deep time to time. Around the infield, Pie Traynor at third, Archie Vaughn, and again, two Pittsburgh Pirates. Played briefly together on the left side. Vaughn, an underrated shortstop. Frank Grant, one of the first African Americans to play in the major leagues in 1884. And Eddie Murray at first. Gabby Hartnett behind the plate. Smoltz is a closer. Their pitching is going to keep them in games. Their lineup, again, not as potent as the Olympics or Haymakers, in my opinion. Bridegrooms we looked at already. The Highlanders. Pitching staff, Ray Brown, Burley Grimes, Steve Carlton, Cy Young, and Smokey Joe Williams. Solid, young, good ratings. Smokey Joe Williams will probably be the ace on that staff. Outfield, great defense, and Roberto Clemente in right. Ty Cobb is going to create havoc on the base paths in center, and Ducky Medwick in left. Again, not a great power hitting outfield. Chipper Jones at the hot corner, Joe Cronin and Eddie Collins in the middle. Cronin, good defensive player, as is Collins. Collins is going to get on base. So they've got a couple of good guys at the top of the order. Home run threat in this lineup is going to be Lou Gehrig, and he'll drive in some runs, and of course Josh Gibson as well. So yeah, they're a team that I see having a winning record. Two more to go. Keystones, Jack Morris, the Hoosier Thunderbolt Amos Russi, Burt Blyleven, Greg Maddux, and the great Walter Johnson. So definitely good stuff at the top of the rotation in Maddux and Johnson. Rest of them are serviceable. Hack Wilson, who got in on his great 190 RBI season, he'll give you some pop in right. Stan the Man Musial in center, Ricky Henderson in left. That's an outfield that's going to be dangerous. You got power, you got speed, you got some contact, and they're going to be sound defensively. Around the infield, Ray Dandridge, Bobby Wallace, an underrated shortstop, Nap Lajoie at second. He's going to get on base, probably a good two-slot hitter behind Henderson. Jeff Bagwell at first, one of the weaker first base choices. And again, these teams could all get upgraded based on the random blind assignment that I do with the rest of the players, and Hilton Smith the closer. So that's a team, if they pick up a couple of good players and maybe a better first baseman in the random assignment that I'm going to do after this draft, they could contend too for a top 3 spot. On the mound, Whitey Ford, this is Excelsiors again, Old Hoss Radbourne, Juan Marichal, the big unit Randy Johnson, Rube Waddell. These guys are going to be dynamite on top of the rotation. 2 great strikeout pitchers. Johnson double flash, Waddell flash. Whitey Ford is semi-flash, as is Old Hoss Radbourne and Juan Marichal. So these 2 guys, though, they'll rack up some strikeouts. Outfield, Sam Rice, a so-so pick in right, probably looking to upgrade there. Bucketfoot Al Simmons in center. He is an excellent and often overlooked hitter from the 20s and 30s. And Zach Wheaton left. Overall, not the strongest outfield. Infield, Freddie Lindstrom at third. Huey Jennings at short. Bill Mazeroski at second. Jake Beckley at first. And Mike Piazza behind the plate. Really, their everyday lineup for the Excelsiors doesn't scare me as much as some of the other ones. So I think they're going to struggle to have a winning record. So hey, there you have it. The inaugural Legend Cooperstown League of Legends, featuring the History Maker Baseball Cooperstown Legends and Cooperstown Pioneer sets. Again, great quality cards. It's going to be fun to roll some games with these guys. So that is our draft. To me, the 2 winners of the draft were the Olympics and the Haymakers. And again, there are some great players that did not make it to the draft board that will be assigned randomly. Guys like Harmon Killebrew, who can give a team some needed pop at the hot corner. A lot of good outfielders that didn't make it into the draft. Reggie Jackson, Ralph Kiner still in there. So if teams are looking for some home run power, Harry Heilman. Actually, a lot of great outfielders left, so they're going to help some too. Now, I'm going to play this league with the DH as well. The flavor would be to have the pitchers hit, but there's so much firepower in this set that you've got to, in my opinion, insert an extra bat into the lineup. So one of these guys that didn't get picked in the draft that gets assigned when I do the random assignment is going to contribute to a team as a designated hitter. For pitchers, we'll go with a 4-man rotation, and we have basically only 1 relief pitcher or 1 closer per team. So some of the starters will pitch in relief as well, and that'll be based on traits. But yeah, it should be fun. I'm looking forward to playing with this set, and there'll be some pretty competitive games. So I'm going to do a couple of practice games offline before I put anything on the channel, and get the rust off. It's been, a couple of years since I really played History Maker Baseball. I had the Central League set, which was a lot of fun, a fictional set of 1930s and 40s style players with a lot of cool nicknames. Definitely recommend checking that out. And if you really like, again, to me, History Maker Baseball is a good alternate reality. I mean, to me, it's the best. I'm sorry, alternate reality game where you're not looking to do a strict replay format. If you just want to roll games, have fun in a what-if scenario, and especially with all the pre-game stuff that you do. History Maker Baseball is the best for that. If you're looking to do a strict replay, again, my two favorite are Payoff Pitch and Inside Pitch. Another thing I'm going to do, just a house rule, I don't use the chemistry feature when rolling this game. What I do with the pre-game ritual is I roll on the, I have one batter or one player from each team on the sunny chart, sunny disposition chart, and one player from each team on the stormy disposition chart. Those are my hot and cold players, and I roll for attributes or perks for 2 players a team on those charts as well. So I do incorporate some of the pregame stuff, just not the team chemistry. You know, and again, it's another great thing about this game. There are a lot of rules that are flexible, and you can tailor it to play exactly how you want, unlike, you know, some of the other games of this genre that are more straightforward tabletop games. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the draft, and any comments are welcome on who you think is the best team in this league, and we'll do some more on this. Upcoming on the channel, we will next have start 39 for Fergie Jenkins in his 1969 payoff pitch replay. I'm going to also break out one of the fighters from the upcoming heavyweight set and fight them against one of the fighters from set 1. Possibly doing young Stribling, who is a fighter that deserves recognition and maybe a little bit of, I guess, love that doesn't get talked about a lot now. He faced Max Schmeling for the heavyweight title, lost a 15-round decision. He was primarily a light heavyweight in his career, but he won over 200 fights and basically really an incredible fighter, very gifted boxer, and was tragically killed in a motorcycle accident at the age of 29. So he had over 250 fights between the ages of 17 and 29, and basically was still in his prime when he was killed. And he potentially could have been a heavyweight champion if he had gotten another shot at the title. So yeah, well, I think we'll feature him maybe against a Jack Dempsey or someone of that caliber. And again, using Glory Days Boxing. And then I'm also going to have an announcement when I do that fight. I'll have an announcement on Glory Days Boxing. We had a really good month in April. Probably, actually, it is the best month since the game was first released in terms of sales. Right after May of last year, when the game first came out, and of course, we had a good amount of sales that month. So, in recognition to the support that the community gives, and there's a really great core group of guys that own the game that buy every set that comes out, are very active on the Facebook group page. So in recognition of the support of the game, we're going to have a giveaway coming up, and I'll talk about that when I do the Stribling against whoever I decide to fight him against fight. So that's what's coming up on the channel. Appreciate everyone who joined in the chat. Amish Gaming, Appa Chatter, Joel Gunn, D. Scott Howard, Al Red Sox fan, and Philip Reynolds. Appreciate it, guys. And I hope you all have a great night. And we will see you later. Be safe out there. And we'll be back next again, as mentioned, with a Fergie Jenkins game. And Brian Gorman stopping in for a quick hello. What's up, buddy? Yeah, some interesting happenings in the draft here, but it was a lot of fun. So, hey, have a great night. And again, support all our friends of the community. Al, Red Sox fan. Hey, Al, if you got a plug on what you've got going on next, Appa Chatter, Amish Gaming, and Philip Reynolds also doing things on their channel. So support the community, guys. Philip Reynolds just mentioned he did got Inside Pitch and did a quick overview tutorial of that earlier. So check that out. And hope you all, again, have a great night. We'll see you. Be safe out there and take care.